Well, there are no doubt times when you're listening to EWTN Catholic Radio and a lot of things being talked about. You wish you could weigh in and share your comments and your take and your insights and your lived experiences. Well, here it is. It's your chance again with Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. I am Jerry Usher along with Debbie Georgiani, who is in the studio at the Station of the Cross. They're headquartered in Buffalo, but they have a several station network. And Debbie, you're wrapping up the pledge drive there, as are people in various other parts of the country today.
Yes, this is the final day for our week-long fund drive here at the Station of the Cross. And I put a challenge out there to all the Take Two listeners for the Station of the Cross to make sure they make their pledges during the breaks of this show. I know this is going to be a very popular show, but they got to go fast and make their pledges. I also know that Cleveland The Rock is having their last day today as well. So we want to just light up the phones, guys. Sherry Brownrigg is there guest hosting. Is that a picture of a rock you just held up?
It is a rock, actually.
Oh, cool!
And
wow. So let me get this straight. You have a rock for Cleveland The Rock, and I actually have the Cleveland The Rock, their actual mug, their coffee mug. So Bernadette, you need to send Jerry a coffee mug, not just so he holds up the rock. No, go ahead, Jerry.
Well, this piece of rock here, just a quick story. When we went to the Holy Land, Debbie, and we got out at Caesarea Philippi, where Jesus said to Simon Peter, "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." And they have that big rock edifice there. You can kind of walk in underneath a little bit. And this, I found this there, and I brought it home, and it looks almost identical to the actual stone rock edifice that is there with that little area where you can walk in right there. I thought it was just amazing.
Yeah,
anyway,
I remember when you stuck that in your backpack.
Yeah, and I got out of the country with it.
Yeah, I had. That could be like a weapon.
Yeah, or I don't know if it's stealing. It was I brought a whole bunch of other rocks. People do that. I'm sure they do.
I'm sure they do.
But don't tell anybody, Debbie, because then I could get in trouble.
Wasn't that like 2 years ago, a pilgrimage to the Holy Land? I think we're safe. I think it's good.
Yeah.
But okay, so Cleveland The Rock is having their last day. The Station of the Cross, their last day for their fund drives. Jerry, you said Iowa Catholic Radio. John Leonetti, that you were on his show, I believe, today.
Right.
And they're having their fund drive as well. I know, Jerry, you're going to be coming on and having maybe a surprise. I just let out the surprise. Maybe you'll say hi to the Station of the Cross folks here.
Absolutely.
And I know there's others around the country. So here's another thing, Jerry. Maybe if you're having a pledge drive and you'd like us to announce it, just email us, take2@EWTN.com. Please, if your local listening area is asking you to make a pledge to keep the shows on the air, to keep broadcasting, to fully fund your local listening area, please do so, and do so generously. And obviously, do not forget EWTN. Okay.
That's right. And don't forget to call in on the program today. This is one that Debbie came up with and put on the calendar. And I already have my take on this, Debbie. This was easy for me. Actually, it wasn't easy because we're talking about childhood challenges. What was the most challenging thing about your childhood? And Debbie, it was easy for me in a sense that I had so many to choose from. It was hard because I had so many to choose from. But I'm going to share what mine was. But here's the phone number, folks. If you remember back in when you were growing up, was it because you were the oldest child and you were treated differently? You were the youngest child. Maybe you were a middle child. Maybe like me, you had some sort of I had a slight birth defect. I'll tell a little bit about that. Maybe it was you were picked on because you had red hair. You were bullied. Maybe you're from a broken home. Maybe your family moved around a lot and you never made friends in school. So, Debbie, this is a great topic. And the thing I like about this is because we have to overcome these things as we mature into adulthood. And sometimes we do that better than other times.
Yeah, they become things that really change and shape our personality. They're defining periods in our life that we can use in a positive way in the future to maybe build character, resilience, all sorts of things. Or maybe we don't get over them fully or get through them or learn from them or whatever psychological term you can use or apply to this, Jerry. And then they enter into our relationships and that's what is termed, we're bringing baggage into our relationships or into our work life or into our school life. And you know what? That's not good. So that's why we wanted to talk about these childhood challenges, because one of the reasons why Take Two is so popular is because we realize we're not alone. We're listening to each other's stories and we're saying, you know what? I used to think I was all alone growing up with this, but there's other people out there face the same challenges. So let's talk about our childhood challenges. Now we're not counselors or therapists, so we're not here to diagnose or try to treat anything or get you through anything. We're here to just mainly talk about the story of it, and maybe you have a very interesting ending to your story, or it's still evolving, or something of that nature that we can learn from and grow from. So I hope I captured it, because when I had it in mind, I was actually thinking of my childhood, because Mike Peters asked me for some pictures of myself as a younger child, and that's what got me thinking. And so these how these topics come about, Jerry. And I'm thinking this would be interesting to see what others have gone through in their childhood. So here's the number: 833-288-EWTN. That's 1-833-288-3986.
All right. So if you're like me and probably like Debbie, you could have a lot of things that would qualify as the most challenging thing of your childhood. And again, the number 833-288-3986. For me, Debbie, I would say without a doubt it was the divorce of my parents, and the breakup of our family. I mean, all the siblings stayed together with our mom, but I chose something other than that, because that's the biggest thing and maybe the most obvious. But for me, I think I've shared on this show before, I was born with club feet, and for those who don't know what that is, many people do. Your feet are kind of turned in and arched a little bit, and I've seen people who had club feet that never got it treated, and they walk literally almost on the outsides of the balls of their feet and take very, very small steps, and it's very, very cumbersome to walk. And I fortunately had some treatments and a surgery. But all through my high school years, I didn't run like everybody else. I was slower. I couldn't jump as high. And I was called two left feet, okay, by all the guys, on the sports teams. Right. Hey, there's two left feet, And, I rolled with it, but deep down inside, these things do bother us, I think, So I would say that was definitely a challenge for me. And yet, amazingly enough, I think I overachieved, and I was always very successful because I really pushed myself to be good in sports and stuff. So,
Jerry, I know you hear that music. I've got to ask you about that, though, because you just said something that I want to tap into. You said I kind of rolled with it. So let's revisit this after we get back from the break. 1-833-288-3986. Share your childhood challenges with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and you and Rich and Jeff and Ryan. Rich is our producer. Jeff does social media and the meme that we put on the website every day. And Ryan Penny is screening your calls right now. You'll talk to Ryan when you call in 833-288-3986. Talking today about what you consider one of the greatest challenges that you faced as a child. And has that lingered with you? Did you overcome that? Did that motivate you to be better in whatever particular area that challenge occurred in your life? Let us hear from you. Teach some people, because there are probably still some people dealing with the same things right now. And before we go to the calls, Debbie, I just wanted to mention The Best of Catholic Answers Live is on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, it airs 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, a couple of hours Monday through Friday, but they have a Best of Catholic Answers Live, which is Sunday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on many of these same EWTN radio stations.
Nice. Okay, so before we get to the calls, and there is an open phone line, please jump on it at 833-288-3986 and tell us briefly your childhood challenges and how you got through them, overcame them, how it shaped your adult life. Jerry, you said something before the break where you said, I kind of rolled with it. Okay, when you're talking about club feet and the kids maybe making some comments. Okay. But you said it must have stayed with you. It's interesting you said that because you have to say that. What are you going to say? You're grown now. You're going to say, yeah, I rolled with it. Because you, at the time, that was the only way to survive, right? What were you going to do? You couldn't stay in your bedroom 24 hours a day and say, I'm not going to school, Mom. I'm not doing anything. I'm not going out in the world anymore. So you had to, if I may say, almost pretend like you rolled with it.
Right.
But yeah, okay. So may I ask you this question? Now that you're an adult and you've lived many years, looking back on it now, what has that done to your personality? You said about it being an overachiever, but what has it done maybe with relationships, friendships, and stuff like that? Are you worried about how people think of you? Do you not worry? Do you, at this point, it's interesting because people carry this into relationships their whole life, or they go the opposite way. I'm just curious if you can share how that has affected your adult life.
Well, like I said, I think I used it as as motivation when I was in school, and interestingly enough, I was because of achievements, I was the outstanding senior student athlete in my graduating high school class, and even at Franciscan University, I was the outstanding senior for co-curricular activities, which includes classes, clubs, sports, and everything like that. So I thank God for that, but it pushed me to do my very, very best. And I still had those limitations. But I think as I went through adult life, Debbie, I have played, thousands of hours of pickup basketball on outdoor courts, in city parks and in YMCAs and so forth. And I never gave it any thought. I was always able to compete, to hold my own, never the best player there, probably, about the middle of the pack. But I was the type of player that if you gave me one or two other, really top players on my team, I would make them so much better. So I was the point guard, the quarterback on the court, so to speak. And so even though I wasn't quite as athletic, I used my smarts. I used my brains a lot to try to maybe make up for that. So I think as an adult, I really was able to compensate pretty well and adjust pretty well.
Well, and to succeed. I mean, you turned it into something very successful for you, which I think that is admirable. I love that.
Right.
So
what about
that's
you?
Interesting. Well, before we get to Mary, real quickly, hold on. You just called in. We got you ready to go. You're first up. We do have an open phone line. So I want to get, well, actually, we have a couple phone lines because I think one just dropped, but that's okay. Call back. We want to hear your childhood story at 1-833-288-3986. Mine's kind of a sad story. I was sharing it with Steve here. Steve runs the boards, all the controls during the fund drive, and I said, Steve, you think I should share this story? And he says, why don't you pray about it and think about it? And he thought it would be worthy to share. And my story is kind of sad, actually. The childhood challenges I had growing up. I mean, I lived really, I played sports. I did all that. I had a lot of friends. It was a great, that part of it was good. But I was born into a family where I used to call myself the oops baby, but now one of our Take Two listeners said they called their baby a bonus baby. So now I was a bonus baby. My mother had 5 kids in 6.5 years, then 6.5 years later had me, and everybody thought, oh, what's this all about? Aren't you sad that this baby's coming after you thought you had your kids all lined up, all 5 of them? And she said, no, this baby's coming for a reason. This baby's coming for a reason. Well, I came for a reason, all right. I came for a reason because I've been told by my family members that because of my birth, and my parents probably would have never gotten divorced because they're very devout Catholics, but my parents had a very, very tension-filled marriage for 57 years. And I was the baby that was going to bring happiness into the family. And so there was a lot of pressure on me from the moment I was born, all the way till today, actually, because I still take care of my mother. I'm the one of the caregivers for my mother. I was one of the caregivers for my dad. And so, yeah, it was a challenge being born into having to kind of keep happiness and peace and joy in the house of a very tension-filled house. So I don't know if
Interesting.
I ever, yeah, I don't know if I ever got over it, to be honest with you, because I'm still kind of living through it. But it was tough. It was really tough. And I think it's shaped my personality to the point where I don't like things to be I don't like people to go to bed angry or, to have things unresolved. I think you know that, Jerry. I'm always like, we got to solve this now, right, Jerry? So that's where that comes from. In case you wanted to know, it comes from my childhood. So there you go. And I'm starting to well up in tears. So we probably should go to Mary in Midland, Michigan, listening on Sirius XM 130. Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for waiting, and welcome to Take Two.
Well, thank you. This
Hi,
is
Mary.
my first time. I just stepped in the car, and then I heard the question, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, it's meant to
I
be.
just tried to call, and you, yeah. Yeah, it's something that, it sits on my heart a lot, and I've actually done counseling for this, and I just know it's all for a good reason, the challenges that I have. And my challenge mostly growing up was just being very alone a lot of the time. I was one of the youngest kids of the first three were, 1, 2, 3, pretty close. And then there was another one. And then I guess some people thought my mom should just stop, but she said, no, two more. And then there was me. And then my little brother, Paul, 2 years later, and we were born on the exact same date. Years later, I found out it was the Feast of the Triumph of the Holy Cross. And I think there's a reason my mom was just really good at suffering and just yielding to God's will. But anyway, the suffering that I had was before I was born, she had like a nervous breakdown, what they say. So that's her mental illness that she had. And so she didn't really talk to me or to any of us, really. Fortunately, I had an older sister, 12 and a half years older from me, and then so she basically, just took care of me. The harder part, so for a few years, actually, it was pretty nice, except when she was off at school. But then once she went off to college and the other older ones had already gone off to college, then I was pretty much lonely a lot. And like the younger brother, he had to go to a different school for some reason. And when it meant that other sister, she was so much older also, the other one, and she wasn't interested in me. So my greatest hardship was just always being lonely and not quite knowing what to do unless I was in school. School gave me direction.
Right.
So that was it. And it still is like that to this day. I have a hard time deciding what to do a lot of times. What I compensate that with now is finally just trying to set up things. I set up exercise class. Otherwise, I won't get around to it. I set up, dates to meet with people or, scripture study. And all those things, it helps me feel better. And then when there's an empty space, and especially if I'm at home alone, now that my kids are all grown, I just kind of feel empty. And I know God's there with me. So I've learned to just, definitely spend time in prayer with him. I try to go to daily mass, all these things, and daily exercise, they actually all really do help. But there is always kind of like a loneliness in my heart.
Right.
And I know Christ is there for me. So when I remember that, basically when I turn to him, then I'm fine again.
Well, and that's obviously the most important thing we all can do, Mary. Obviously, Debbie and I are not counselors or anything, but we both been through a lot of things like that. And I come from a divorced family, divorced parents, and my father was never around, and that happened when I was 7. And I sometimes I sometimes feel like a 57-year-old 7-year-old because these things stay with us. Like you said, you still have the sort of the playing out of that younger life experience in your older adulthood right now. And that's really the way it is, unfortunately. Our formative years, our psyche, our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, even our behaviors, from what I have studied, and Debbie, you can weigh in on this if you want, but they're so, I don't want to say permanently formed when we're young, but they're so solidly formed. They can be changed. Things can be relearned or unlearned later in life, but it's so often the case that, yeah, we do carry these things into adulthood. And I'm so glad to hear, though, that you said you got some refuge at school, and hopefully that was, it sounds like you had your own kids, and so you've done pretty well, Mary, in spite of some of the challenges that you had when you were a young girl. What do you think, Debbie?
Oh, I totally agree. I think have just done fantastically in having come through that and realizing. And you said you even sought out some therapy, and so have I for similar situations, Mary, that you were discussing about the loneliness. My brothers and sisters all left the house, and then there were just me and my parents, and that wasn't always the most joy-filled household. And so school, same thing. School became something I enjoyed doing, and I excelled at school, and my friends were very important to me. But what was interesting, Mary, as you were talking and you were talking about the loneliness, I started to reflect back to my own childhood, and I thought to myself, now it makes complete sense. That's the reason why I was so drawn to the angels. That's the reason I think my aunt, the Dominican sister who's still alive in Caldwell, New Jersey, introduced us all to the guardian angels. And when I got so interested in that, I never felt alone again, because I started to develop that beautiful relationship with my guardian angel, and Psalm 91 became something that if I could have plaster all over my bedroom walls, I would have done that. And so I felt like I had which I do. I have a constant companion that is a gift from God. I don't know if you've ever cultivated your relationship with your guardian angel, and it's just
not
merely...
really. I'm kind of aware of it, but I'm a little bit afraid to start talking because.
Oh no!
I guess I'm afraid. Don't appear to me.
Yeah, no. Oh, I see what you don't appear. Well, first of all, they rarely do. Just so you know, they're rarely. But
right.
I see what you're saying, and you don't have to talk to them. It's just an awareness that they are there. Just that that they are.
Yeah.
That it was
I've got
a gift.
that part.
Okay, good. That's all. And then they can.
And I ask them to help too from time to time.
Right. Okay, perfect. So then they can minister freely, and that's the thing, is you're giving them permission to minister freely. And we don't have to give the angels get their direction from God, so we don't really give them, that kind of permission. But what I mean by you're cultivating that relationship, which is beautiful. So that awareness allows them to better minister to you. So I don't know if that brings you any kind of additional comfort, but it sounds like you're right on that beautiful road. Anything else you'd love to share about your childhood? Because this is your opportunity.
Well, sure. One of the things that really, really helped, and also my dad was like kind of an absent dad in many ways too. Just because he worked so far away from home, and he was traveling salesman, inventor. Anyway, he's in a museum now for all he's done for the world of plastics, but he was mostly gone. And then when he was home, then he was very, very tired. And then on the weekends, he would take the older boys up to his other project up at the ranch, growing orange trees and sequoia trees. It was wonderful, but, then I was still at home, and then my mom was still at home, that kind of thing. But so the father is another issue now that your husband brought that up. That's actually probably just as much of an influence as my mom.
Right.
Kind of not really being there. Because I think I read something once that really resonated to me once. It was one of those little counseling books, and it talked about, and then when sometimes there's like 2-year-olds or little girls, and sometimes they tell themselves it doesn't really hurt when their father walks through the room and doesn't notice them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it stung me so much. He didn't do it on purpose. He was just very busy, and when I was that old, there's 5 or 6 kids running around, and he had a bad back, and he had to as soon as he got home, he'd been driving 2 hours, he had to go to the bathroom, and then once he did that, he liked to read, so he stood there for hours, and then it's time for me to go to bed. But that's a big, big influence, and so I've done a lot with, I've done a lot of EMDR, where I've tried to quietly go back if something sticks out really hard, and just I tap left and right side on my knees, and then I quietly go in there and breeze, and then just different thoughts come in, like, you're okay, and you're an adult now, and yeah, it was unfortunate that happened. And then a lot of times what always happens is I get the image of, like, God the Father was there all along, and I know it's true. There's so many times we were protected, many times. I mean, anything could have happened at our house. We never locked the doors, but we're always protected.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, Mary. You just touched on something very, very important there. I like to call it reframing. We need to reframe a lot of things that happened to us in the past, things that we experienced, encountered, were traumatized by, things that were done to us, not necessarily things that we did, maybe even things that we did, but some of the things that were done in an environment that we found ourselves in that were unhealthy and maybe formed us in a negative way. That we need to go back in time to those things, maybe with professional help, counselor. It sounds like you do it yourself. But if we can sort of reframe or edit or change those scenes back in our early lives, it can have a great impact on us as adults.
Thank you again, Mary from Midland, Michigan, for sharing your story with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We're talking about childhood challenges today. Things that you face, those obstacles, those difficult times growing up in your family, in the region of the world that you lived in. Maybe you moved a lot. I want to share that real quickly because it's very important. Marty rarely weighs in on topics because he likes to listen to the phone, all the phone calls that come in. But he actually shared one with me last night that he says, hey, maybe if you have time, you can share it real quickly on Take Two. And I said, sure, absolutely, because when Marty speaks, we all listen. But again, real quick, let me just go back. Mary, I just had another thought. If you're listening, I wanted to give you time to listen to your radio again. Mary, you're never, ever, ever alone. You got your guardian angels. You're named Mary. You got the Blessed Mother who's there with you. Of course, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. You're crowded out by saints, and it's amazing. And everybody who's gone before you, you've got a crowd around you. Always remember that. Oh, in fact, everybody remember that. You got a big crowd around you at all times. Okay, Marty, real quickly, Jerry, and here's the number. Get in on this story and tell your story about childhood challenges and how it has shaped you into your adult life. Marty grew up, his parents divorced when he was very young. He was only 5 years old. He moved cross country, Jerry, so he left his home in upstate New York, moved to Arizona, and was the youngest of 5. And Marty and his dad was a single dad. He lived with his dad, and his dad moved around every single year, pretty much. And so Marty had to kind of plant roots and start up again, new friends. So basketball became a very, very, very close friend of his. In fact, he even walked the halls of school with a basketball under his arm. So what does that tell you? It always reminds me of that movie with Tom Hanks with Wilson. Remember, it was a Castaway or something of that nature. But the story Marty tells me that I talk about a challenge. You talk about a challenge. Marty and his brother shared a bedroom. There was 5 kids. They didn't have, since they moved so much, they didn't have much money. They didn't have much furniture. Marty and his brother slept on the floor. They slept on the floor, and every day, because Marty wanted a bed, he would fix the bed like it was a bed, but it was on the floor. So every day he'd pull the covers up and fold them over a little bit like a hospital, like not a hospital, like a hotel room, and it was a floor and a sheet and a comforter and a pillow. And I asked him one time, I said, "Is that why you have such a bad back?" He says, "No, he was in a car accident." But I'm wondering, but I said, "How did that shape you?" He says, "I appreciate everything. I appreciate everything now." And I think he learned that when he was a little kid, having to fix his bed, which was really the floor. So.
Yeah, beautiful story. Marty is Debbie's husband, by the way, for those who are wondering. Beautiful, wonderful man, and I'm glad he does weigh in when he does, Debbie. Thank you, Marty. We're going to go to Maria here in just a moment. We have a number of emails and social media comments to try to get to as well. But the phone number again is 833 288-3986, 833-288 EWTN. Take 2 with Jerry and Debbie, talking about maybe what might have been a childhood challenge for you. Debbie mentioned maybe you moved a lot, maybe it involved your friends, maybe it involved activities, maybe you had some sort of a disadvantage like I did. I was born with the club feet, so I got kind of ridiculed about that. Maybe you tried at a musical instrument and just couldn't get it, or maybe a parent or both parents, just your home life just wasn't all that nurturing. We're not trying to, dredge up old painful memories here. We're just trying to say, okay, how do we kind of take those challenges, those obstacles, some negative things that might have been present early in our lives, and become better people, more whole, healed, godly people later in life. So do join us as we actually Maria just dropped for a minute, so other calls are being screened. Yeah.
Well, do you know what, Jerry? I think the reason why is I think folks are actually weighing in via social media and emails, because I'm getting a lot of text messages. Do we? And I because I'm at the Station of the Cross, I'm not in my home studio, so I don't. Are you getting a lot of social media comments as well?
There are. Yeah. Let me.
Wow.
Go ahead.
See, I thought that's what was happening. Go ahead.
Well, Norma sent an email to take2@EWTN.com, and Norma said, "Growing up, my father left the church and he became a Protestant Pentecostal minister. He's been so since about 1979. My parents fought constantly because my mother would not leave the Catholic Church and insisted that we 4 kids would be raised the same. She did the best she could. My father hated Catholicism and Our Lady, and I realized a few years ago we were his shame. He was a light in his community and could do no wrong. We haven't spoken in about 9 or 10 years. My husband and kids and I are all practicing Catholics." And that is from Norma.
Wow, that's a lot to go through, Norma. A lot. I mean, but prayers for your entire family, because I always say this. Never say never, right, Jerry?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? There's always, with God, all things are possible.
That's right.
When you say, because I think about my kids, and I don't have really any type of meaningful relationship with my children for 11 years. And some people said, how does that feel to never, they use the word never or always. You just, I don't know. Those are words I don't put in my vocabulary. But that's a lot, Norma. You've been through a lot. Okay.
Yeah, and we will definitely keep that, your entire family, in our prayers, and your father as well. Thank you, Norma, for weighing in on that. Let's see, Steve Steve on Facebook.
Right.
You can look at EWTN Catholic Radio Facebook page. Steve says, "I lived in poverty on the farm in northern Maine, and it built character." And Debbie, we know when like you said with Marty, he didn't have things very good, or very normal, quote unquote normal life. He had that difficult situation of sleeping on the floor,
mm-hmm.
and like Steve and Marty, Steve says it built character, Debbie, and it really does.
There you go. There you go. It does. And you appreciate things. You're grateful for things because you didn't have them and now you can appreciate them. Yeah, so here we go. We're developing a theme here that we can all learn and grow from. Kelly in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania has been waiting on Holy Family Radio. Kelly, thank you so much and welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Sure, thank you. I listen to you guys all day, every day. So everybody. Yes. My parents got divorced when I was 6 years old. It was really, really hard for me. They were good to each other. We used to always joke about how it was such a great divorce because my mother and father never fought. My mother was, quote, unhappy. But I've had animosity all my life towards her, thinking she put her happiness above mine. I also ached for my father constantly, even though he was always around. He saw us every other weekend. My mother moved us. I didn't settle until third grade. I went to 4 different schools until third grade. To this day, my entire life has been impacted by that divorce. I sometimes get frustrated with myself going, you're 40-some years old, you've been married, and, let this go. I can't. I absolutely can't. And I've gone to therapy. I've gone, and I can tell you what's wrong. I can tell you how I feel, but I can't fix it. And I think the most frustrating part was when I got married. I would have done anything to keep my family together. But my husband was an alcoholic, and I had 2 girls and a boy, and all I could see was that my son was going to end up, looking up to his father, and, as young boys do. And it broke my heart. And I left, and I cried to him for years. I'm still not divorced, and we've been separated for 7 years because I can't do it. But it destroys people. People go, kids are resilient. They'll get over it. You know what? They don't get over it. It is horrific. To me, it is one of the most horrible, horrible things out there is divorce. It just tears families apart. Now, I understand if there's, you're in danger or things are just, horribly bad, but people just absolutely give up too easy today. They just really do. It breaks my heart. Breaks my heart.
Right.
I
Kelly,
think my heart's still broken from when I was a kid, so.
Well,
yeah.
it probably is,
really
Kelly.
tough.
It probably is. And
Yeah.
I can tell you that my heart is still broken about that as well. And I have been...
Being a 56, 7-year-old, I was like, that's exactly how I feel. My emotions still feel like a little girl a lot, and it's hard for me. It's really hard for me. I almost relate to younger people easier or very older people, no one my age, because I feel like, they're like, well, you're too emotional, you're too sensitive. I mean, I can't help that's who I am, and that's probably a big part of it, to be honest with you, but I also had a very bad babysitter. That was very traumatic for me from the age of 3.5, 4 to 6. But my mother didn't know it. She would threaten us and say, if you tell your parents, you're going to be in bigger trouble when you get here. So That was very traumatizing.
Well, yeah, and Kelly, again, Debbie and I are certainly not therapists, counselors, or anything, but again, as you heard listening to the show, we have our own lived experiences. And like I said, I've been in counseling. I've talked to friends. I've had times when I've been talking about my family of origin, my parents' divorce, basically the abandonment by our dad. And, I will just break down crying, and all of a sudden I'll say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And people are like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I feel bad. Because I look at myself, I go, Jerry, come on, you're 57 years old, man. Come on, pick yourself up off by your bootstraps and get moving on down the road. But the thing is, these ideas, these notions, these wounds, our psyche, and all of these things are ingrained in us, at a very young age, and they can be healed, they can be overcome, we can move beyond them, but that takes time, it takes work, it takes prayer, it takes God's grace, it takes healing. And so it's certainly nothing to be ashamed of for any of us who, maybe have these wounds, these traumas that we're still trying to work our way through. But you're right. And Debbie Deacon Harold Bergsiver is a good friend of ours. Many people may know him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. You
go ahead. You go ahead.
Know where I'm going?
Yes, I do. The cross. Yes.
Yeah, Deacon Harold says, when parents divorce, he says divorce is when parents lay down the cross and the kids pick it up.
They have to pick it up.
Yeah. The kids feel that they have to pick it up, and they feel like it's their fault, and they'll do anything to try and keep mommy and daddy together and keep them from separating and all of this. And so, yeah, Kelly is right on the mark on me. Yeah,
and I just want to say, Kelly, I went through a divorce, and I've shared this on the show many times. I actually saw the day, I remember the day vividly, that my children died that day. And there was nothing I could do about it. It was horrible. So I agree with you 110% that people give up too easily, that divorce, it's tragic and terrible and traumatic and evil and wrong so many times for divorce. But I agree. I know we have to put in the disclaimers, like if you're in an abusive situation, and you have to protect the family. I get that. But I'm talking about the ones that say, I've had enough, I'm done, I'm out, or I found somebody else who I love more, or whatever excuse anybody wants to make to step out. I think it's horrible what it does to the children for a lifetime. And my heart goes out to you because I saw it happen. It's happening with my own children. And so if the only thing that we can do, though, we have to go to what Mother Teresa says. We have to start in our own communities, and we have to really try to educate people and tell our story. And you, Kelly, tell your story. If you can save one marriage, that's awesome. You got to imagine that the good Lord's gonna say, "Way to go, Kelly." That's what we have to do in our own communities. So I just want to know if you've been telling your story like this, because it's powerful and it could make people think twice about making that tragic next step to file those papers. What do you think?
I do. I try to tell anyone and everyone that I come in contact with that, like, divorce is the most horrible thing that you can do. I mean, not just for your children, but for yourself and for generations to come. And it's people don't understand. And I try to tell people that, anyone that I come in contact with, that you've got to give it everything you've got. Yes. One thing I told my children, I said, please, when you choose someone to spend your life with, please make sure that they have the faith in the Lord, so that you at least have that foundation to work from, because that is vital. To me, that's one of the most important part. I did not have that. We were not, quote, equally yoked. He didn't say there was no Lord, but he did not practice at all. And when I would go, he would say things like, "Oh, you know, what are you getting all dressed up for? Who's at church?" And I said, "You're welcome to come. Absolutely, anytime, anywhere. You can come along." So, but it was just his insecurity, and I couldn't fight it anymore with that and the alcoholism. It was a horrible. I mean, you have him coming in the house at 3:00 in the morning, and falling on the floor. I didn't want that for my children, but it was very hard because I still love him, and that makes it really, really hard. So,
Kelly,
yeah, I do. I tell everyone.
Okay, but Kelly, when you're talking, it sounds like through your lifetime, there's been a lot of things that got kind of tangled up, or what I mean by that is, okay, the Lady Undoer of Knots novena, please, if you haven't adopted it yet, pray it, and then pray it again, and pray it again, and pray it again, and pray. Okay. Please watch what happens. Our Lady wants to undo everything and try to make things right. That's her. That's her as our spiritual mother. She's a typical mother. She wants to fix everything. And she will she will fix, either she will actually help to fix it emotionally, physically, psychologically, whatever it needs to be fixed that is able to be done for the will of God. She will act if we keep asking her and have trust and confidence in her. I'm going to do it for you as well, Kelly. So
thank you so much. Thank you. And I'll be honest with you, when I called, I kept going back and forth. Should I call? Should I not call? I have been praying for the past week, well, always, but really, really strongly, please, Lord, if my love that's hanging on for him is something you want, so that inevitably we do get back, or is this something that's trapped in me from my emotions, from my youth? I need to discern. I really need to discern, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So thank you very much for that. For praying for that, and I really appreciate it. I will do the same.
Would you stay in touch with us by email, take2 at EWTN.com, because if we're going to be praying this, we need to know how you're doing, okay?
How it's going, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly.
At EWTN. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Be strong, and just be comforted knowing that the prayer is happening. So that's always brings great comfort. I love living on prayer, Jerry.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Kelly. Inspiring call, actually, because, as we ended there, Debbie, you mentioned the prayer, Our Lady Undoer of Knots. And so many times, I've said this before, with physical injuries, we break our arm or something, there's a visible, tangible plan of healing and recovery, and then restoration of the arm, and when you can use it again, and it's going to be back to normal. when we're talking about these hidden emotional, psychological wounds and traumas, and again, we're not counselors or therapists, but we've been through this, you don't know. Sometimes you might fall into the temptation to think this can't be healed. There's no way to overcome this. There's no way to rewire our brains and so forth. But think about it. We are not born with these negative thoughts about ourselves. We're not born with the wounds and the traumas. These are things that we encounter, that we experience, that are sometimes inflicted upon us, and that sort of changes our thinking, changes our mind, changes our psyche, and so forth. But that can be undone, of course, by the divine physician, Jesus Christ himself. Obviously, with some professional counseling, perhaps, maybe praying with people, and just entrusting it to the Holy Spirit. So we have to believe, Debbie, that these things which are unseen and that cause us maybe to have grief and difficulties in our adult life because of things that happened earlier in our lives, God can and does want to heal those and restore us and make us whole again. So,
why do you think Matthew 19:26 is plastered all over my studio wall? Because with God, with man, we mess it up. It's not possible. With God, all things are possible. He doesn't say, with God, some things are possible, maybe some things, or if I feel like some things are possible. With God, all things are possible. It's not impossible for God to do it. For man, we mess it up. And it can be fixed for so many reasons. So, yeah, Jerry, there's so many ways we can go with this, but I want people to, when they're going through hard things like Kelly is going through right now and others, I don't want anybody to ever lose hope, feel like they're lost out there in the middle of the ocean, kind of treading water. God's there. He's there, and he's sending his angels, the saints. The Blessed Mother is wrapping her arms around you. We just got to hold on,
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly, again for the call. Robert, we're going to go right to you. After I mentioned this, there were some new saints canonized by Pope Francis last Sunday. One of them was Pope Paul VI. He is now Saint Pope Paul VI. He is the famous pope for writing Humanae Vitae, that great pro-life encyclical that was very prophetic, I think it's a little over 50 years ago. And there's a new book by Dr. Matthew Bunson. If you've heard his name before, he's written over 50 books, written or co-written. And he has a book called Saint Pope Paul VI, celebrating the 262nd Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. Pope Paul VI was widely recognized as the first modern pope, and you'll come to understand a lot of important things like the root causes of secularism, the risks of globalization, the damage caused by the isolation of young people in the modern world, why human dignity has to be safeguarded in the advance of scientific developments and so forth. Very, very wonderful book by Dr. Matthew Bunson, Saint Pope Paul VI, celebrating the 262nd Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. It's available right now at EWTNRC.com.
It just hurts my brain to think about how many brain cells Dr. Matthew Bunson's using. It hurts. I can't even imagine it, Jerry. He must have been born with like an oversized brain or something. I don't know. We need to ask Matthew the next time we talk to him.
Some people are gifted that way.
I know, he really is. And he uses his gifts for the glory of God, which I just absolutely love. Robert, in San Antonio, Texas, you got our Virtual Patience Award today on a Friday. You're so very lucky. We don't know what you're going to do with it, but you're calling in from Guadalupe Radio Network. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
I really enjoy hearing you and Jerry talk.
Thank you.
I was telling the screener that I identify with Jerry being like in high school and all the way, from elementary all the way to high school. I was very athletic. But then when I went to college, I didn't have time for athletics when I was in college. And so I became more a bookworm after college. And the thing is that I was pushed into being a caregiver for my mom and dad, because my mom was a school teacher for a number of years, and my dad was a barber for 45 years. And, eventually one day my dad got cancer, and I'm the only one who was not married, and all my brothers and sisters were married at that time. So I became a caretaker for my dad when he got cancer. And then when my mom died of old age, I took care of her. And it wasn't until my mom was in the hospital, that's when all my sisters and brothers were able to help my mom. But for the most part, I agree with you. I agree with you too, Debbie, that my parents were not happily married. They were always a lot of tension between my mom and dad. But they didn't believe in divorce, my mom and dad. They were the old-fashioned Catholics that didn't believe in divorce. Mm-hmm. And but no, I just wanted to let you know that how I identify living with Jerry, being athletic, and at the same time, I go with you too, Debbie. Yeah. That growing up and thing, but then when you're already an adult, you got to take care of your mom and dad. Mm-hmm. If you're not married, it is. You got to take care of your mom and dad.
Robert,
I'm the one who's not married, and I'm the main caregiver.
Right.
Of both of my mom and dad.
Right. Well, but Robert, you know what when I hear your heart, because I'm a very heart-driven person. I always have been. I mean, I like to think I have a little bit of an intelligence, but I'm a heart-driven person that I lead with my heart. And Robert, what I hear in you is this beautiful giving soul who loves and honors, just like the commandment says, to honor your father and mother. And you've done that so beautifully. And you got to imagine that the good Lord has always smiled on that, what you've been through. You've been through a lot, but you're here today telling your story. And it's got to make you feel good inside that I believe anyway, God willing, someday you hear those words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And because I think that's the best, most amazing phrase you could ever hear from our God. And I pray that for you. I pray you hear those words someday when your purpose is fulfilled here, because that's what I look forward to. That's what I want on my crypt tombstone thing. That's what I want. I just want it so badly. I could taste it. And so, Robert, I pray that for you. You're a beautiful soul. Thank you for calling in and getting the Virtual Patience Award and sharing your story. And we were blessed by your story today, and it was a beautiful way to wrap up this I think a very healthy discussion for all of us.
Yeah, Robert, thank you so much. You go with our prayers. We ask you to keep us in yours. Mike on YouTube said, "I got picked on by everyone." Mike, we hope that that is not something that is causing you too much trouble now in life. Hope that you've had a lot of healing in that area. Elizabeth, now that I'm an adult, I have 3 kids, and I have my middle child that has health issues, including a learning disability. She said, "I think I have a learning disability. For school was difficult for me." And wow. Michelle on YouTube, "The worst thing about my childhood, not feeling wanted or welcomed in my home. My stepmom did not like me from the time I can remember, even before I lived with her." So, Michelle, you'll be in our prayers as well.
Yeah, see, so many people, we've been through a lot. See, we're not alone, guys. A lot of that's why we tell these stories, because we don't want anybody to ever think this is only happening to me, and so God must not like me. He must not know me. He must be so far away from me. No, this is what we're in. We're in a sinful world, and things happen, and free will takes over, and this is what happens. And so people suffer, even as children. But we can make the best out of it when we start to develop our relationship with God. That's my takeaway anyway, Jerry.
Well, one more here, Tony. "My mother had mental illness in and out of institutions. Father died of a heart attack. I had 4 siblings, so 5 of us in all. Living with a mother with mental illness is a horror. My mother attempted suicide 3 times in front of us kids. My brother committed suicide in August 2017. So, Tony, you and all of your family are going to be in our prayers, and the entire Take 2 family. Thank you all so much. Please pray for us, and know that we all pray for you. That includes Rich, Jeff, and Ryan, and all of the show team.
So thank you so much. Guys, thanks for full participation. We'll see you on Monday. Have a beautiful and blessed weekend.